Hello, everyone, and welcome to another session of live online learning. We're very happy to have with us Marianne Post, and we're going to be covering multi-camera workflows. So we're excited to get going today. So Marianne, we will go ahead and do the Zoom, and then I'll get you going. If you are watching us on Zoom, please know that your audio is muted. Feel free to ask questions in the questions field. Also on our social feeds, I will keep track of as many feeds as I can. Feel free to enter your questions in there. The session is being recorded, and we'd love to get your feedback on how you are finding the sessions and also topics for us going forward. So most of you know Marianne Post. She's one of our Avid Master instructors. She also writes a lot of our content. Just a hint going forward if you're looking to excel in some of the stuff with Media Composer. So Marianne's going to be covering multi-camera work today. So Marianne, I'm going to pass it your way.
All right, thanks, Don. Hi, everybody. I hope you're doing well. And yep, we're going to talk multicam workflow. So the emphasis is going to be some power tips to help streamline the process for those of you guys who are using multicam. If you're new to multicam, you're going to get like the crash course and all the tips. I am going to share my screen here to get us going. Everything's good. And you'll see, hopefully, a pretty empty Media Composer interface. Basically, I'm at the stage of an edit where all the source has been brought in and then copied into working bins. So my first example here is a bin with multicam clips, and they're all individual clips. I'm just going to move my bin out into its own window a second so we can take a look at this. So I have 12 shots, and I'm in 2021.5, which has that lovely indicator at the bottom of the bin telling me how many elements I have and various information, which was introduced in 2021.3. I'm ready to make my group clip because I've got this all set up. Now, one note, it goes based on text view. So if you are working in frame view, previewing footage and that kind of thing, rearranging shots, you're going to want to take advantage probably of this first tip I have. So right now, everything's listed alphabetically. So if I were to select my shots, this would be the first clip in the multicam. So in the upper left corner in the interface. So what if I don't want that to be the first one? Well, you're going to want to take advantage of, let me just simplify my view here a little bit, of either the comments field or custom field. So I didn't have anything in comments. So I went ahead and numbered my clips based on where I want them to appear. And so the shot order I can do quickly by either doing Command equals on the Mac, Command E on the Mac, Control E on Windows to sort, or just a quick double click on the column heads. I just double clicked comments and there we go. So this is going to be my shot order in the multicam interface. So then to create my group clip, you can go select them all and then go to your clip menu and group them, or right click on one, or use the keyboard shortcut because this is a power tip session, Shift Command G, and that'll take you into group clips. Shift Command G as in group, Shift Control G on Windows. And then in this interface, I get options for how I want to sync them up. So this is so I don't have to manually sync them. And this is a music video that was all shot in a live stage environment. So multiple cameras lined up. It might be a sporting event. It might be a narrative scene, that kind of thing. So ideally, every camera recorded waveforms. So you can do a quick waveform analysis. If not, hopefully all the shots share the same time code range so that you can go by source time code. Otherwise, you get the fun task of going into every shot, finding your sync point, maybe a clapboard or something in the scene. You'll be able to find something, because I have had the nightmare situation where I had to find something in the live event to sync everything up to, and then either mark in points or out points. If you're in a situation where you can take advantage of the auxiliary time code, that's an option as well. So ideally, waveforms, even if it's horrible audio, if your camera can record it if you have that control. Otherwise, source time code. So I'm going to go ahead and do waveform analysis, and I just clicked OK. And you're going to see that this is going to go through all of these. It's about a 1-minute video with 12 angles, so it's actually pretty quick. I'm live, so nothing's being sped up and already done. So here's my group clip, and you can see that the difference in the icon is the 4-box display. And then I'm just going to click on the name field, and I'm going to call this UN. This is like, say, scene 3. And then I like to put group just because like text searching within Media Composer helps me to label things. Okay, now what if, just real fast here, what if all of these had like audio except for maybe one? As you can see in my tracks column, they do all have audio, so this was all good. But if not, you can say like these first group here, we're all good. I would select those and do the operation I just did, the Shift Command G, do my waveform analysis. And then what I'll do is right click my group clip and choose edit group. So this is a newer feature in the last couple of years. When I do edit group, it actually opens the group in my timeline. Okay, so instead of me manually stacking all this up, Media Composer took care of it for me. And you can see some shots are shorter than others, which is why we have the filler gaps on either side. Okay, so if I had to add an angle, you can treat this like a timeline. You would just add your track. So for example, Command Y, Control Y in Windows. There's my V13. And then I would load the clip into my source monitor and do your, let me just get this out of the way here. Okay, load it into the source monitor and do your normal patching and editing. Okay. Okay, I'm just gonna come down here and get rid of this track. Okay. Now, now I'm gonna, once you get everything all grouped together, you load your group clip in the source monitor. So those of you who've been doing this, I'm not going to save those changes. You could either update your clip or actually create a copy of it. Or in my case, I'm not going to save that change. Okay, so then it's just edit it in because this is getting prepped for a rough cut. So I'm at about the spot where I want this to go. One thing I forgot to point out when I made the group clip, the name of it was the top clip in my scene, which was clip number 13. Okay. And then I'm just going to overwrite this B key, or you can splice to V key. And there we go. So here's my group clip. It's got the G. So now I'm ready to literally make my cut. Now I'm going to talk while I'm doing this. So I'm not going to do my normal cutting to audio. I'm just going to mute so you guys can see the interface, which is the key here. So normally, if you're not going to map anything to the keyboard, or if you don't use Multicam that often, you're exactly at the stage where you'd go into multicam mode, Shift Command M, Shift Control M on Windows. And I'm ready to play and then just start making my cuts. Okay. And you won't see the cuts in the timeline. I'm just clicking on my display, each monitor, and it's making those shot changes. Okay. Now I'm going to stop that a second. I just hit my space bar, and this might be a little hard to see over social or Zoom, but there's individual cuts here. And as I just kind of scrub through my timeline, you can see on my right record monitor that my shots are changing. Okay, now, but more on an efficiency side of things. You're gonna probably want to, if you're doing a lot of multicam editing, you're gonna want to take advantage of your keyboard and that kind of thing. So I'm just gonna exit multicam mode, Shift Command M, Shift Control M on Windows, and I'm just gonna reload my source shot and overwrite this. Now I have a fresh copy in my timeline. My strategy always is my upper left is the clip that's got the good audio, because by default, when you're cutting, it's just going to cut video. If not that, my establishing shot. And if my establishing shot has both, there we go, success. To use the keyboard, you're going to want to do a little bit of mapping. So I'm going to call up my keyboard settings, Shift Command equals on Windows, or Mac, Shift Control equals on Windows. Mac users, you can use the universal command comma, by the way, but otherwise it's Shift Command equals. Okay, so I'm in my user setting and I'm going to call up my keyboard. And I'm in my Zoom resolution. So you can see I don't have a ton of real estate space here. And then I'm going to hit Command 3, Control 3 on Windows to open up my command palette. And there's a whole Multicam tab. So couple of tips. So I use that long shortcut, or go to the Composer drop-down menu to call up Multicam mode. If you map quad split or 9 split to your keyboard, you can use that to enter and exit Multicam mode. So what I'm going to do is just go to a button-to-button reassignment. I've got my keyboard here. It's pretty much a default keyboard minus the F5 through 7 keys are workspaces. And then A and S key, I always put previous and next event. But other than that, this is a default keyboard. So if I want my quad and 9 split, I can put that maybe on F8 and then Shift F8. And then that way I can enter Multicam mode using that, which I'll show in a second. When I was clicking on the images and it was creating the cuts and switching shots, that's the equivalent of the M keys. And by default, those are on M9 through 12 and then Shift M9 through 12. Notice, like, if you have 9 images that are 9 angles, that you would want to probably remap that. One thing to keep in mind is your if you're working on an extended keyboard with a numeric keypad, you can use that for Multicam. It's already built in. And what key goes where depends on if you're in the 4 split or the 9 split. So you might just want to go to help menu and look those up if you haven't used that. But they are baked into your numeric keypad. The other thing is, because I do have 2 banks here, is I might do my swap banks. Okay. So I'm just going to go to active palette a second, go to 9 split, which is the equivalent of me just hitting my keyboard shortcut. So if I did need to switch between my banks, I can do that. Now, these are kind of just all very similar shots, so I'm not going to need that today. But it just toggles. And if you're in a 4 split, it'll actually cycle through all of your angles. Okay, so there's that. And then finally, the other piece you're going to want is previous and next group. If you've been using Multicam for a bit, it used to be on the up and down arrow keys. Now by default, it's just on Shift up and down arrow. So you could move that out if you wanted to, and that's going to cycle through these for switching angles. All right, so there's my setup. Now, one last thing. If you're like me, I'm not great at rhythm and visuals all at once. I don't do Multicam enough. So if you're in that situation where sometimes you're using it and sometimes you're not, it's just not that dialed in for you, you might follow my workflow, which is actually using the add edit function to get the rhythm down and then switch my angles. So I'm going to go ahead and map add edit and put that on F4 today. Okay, so I've got everything I need for my workflow. So as you can see, like everything in Media Composer, there are multiple options for working through Multicam. Okay, so that's my setup. And so I'll just close out my keyboard for right now, and I'm just going to close out of settings. Okay, so essentially I did this setup where I lined up my groups in text mode or in text view, and then I created my group clip, and then I created my sequence, which is going to be, this is a video called Unleashed. That's where the UN comes from. Scene 3, or spell it correctly, scene 3, and then V1 rough. Okay, it's my sequence. All right, so I've got that in there. My sequence always goes in a sequence bin unless I'm teaching, just trying to save a little bit of time. Okay, so now that I'm in here, let me just come out of Multicam mode. So assuming that I just made my edit and now I'm ready to use all those keyboard shortcuts I just went over, I'm just going to hold down my Shift key and hit F8, which is going to take me into the 9 split. I would have hit just F8 without a modifier key if I wanted the quad split, and then I can get out the same way. So I don't need the Shift Command M anymore, especially if you're always doing a 9 split. You don't have, it's not 2 steps. depending on where you're at with your settings. Second, now I'm ready to make my cuts. For me, that's just going to be getting the rhythm down. Now I'm going to talk while I'm doing this. So I'm going to leave this muted, but normally I'm listening to the audio and then I get my rhythm, whether it's based on voice narration or music. So I'll just play and then I'm going to hit F4 and it's just going to stay on the same angle, which is why I want to set up my sequence with the wide shot. Okay. And as I'm doing this and listening, since my focus is listening, once I get in a groove, I'm also paying attention to all the shots that are playing back. So I've just been hitting F4, not in any sort of rhythm, just kind of randomly here. And then when I stop playback, oops, when I stop my playback, I must have had something on here on the OS level. See if I can get some ad edits here. Okay, so my OS is getting priority here because I have screen capture set to F4, so I should not have mapped my ad edit to there. So I'm just going to pretend this worked live. It's always fun. So I'm just using the ad edit function here. In fact, now in later recent versions of Media Composer, in some cases you can use ad edits and those functions and it'll keep playing. Multicam is not one of those, at least in this monitor resolution. Okay, I've got my ad edits and I'm not just taking snapshots on my screen. And now I would change my shots. So this is where that other keyboard shortcut of shift up arrow, which will cycle through, and shift down arrow as well. So you can just go to each one of these and pick your shot, or Option Alt on Windows and click the angle you want. Okay, so I get my sequence built. I do my ad edits. I just picked a poor F key today to map it to. So in my case, I was doing F4 and it should have done my ad edits. And then you switch your shots either using the cycling through the groups or Option click. The other option you can do if you know your shot names really, really well is you can right click in your timeline and choose an angle as well. Okay, so now I've got several shots here and this is all doing the rough edit. Okay. Now, if you're using inside a multicam, I'm going to move into my sequence a bit, and you're playing back and you're clicking, or if you don't have all your audio tracks selected, so let me just make a couple clicks here. So if you're using like your M keys, okay, so I did that. Notice, and this might be, depending on your resolution, hard to see. When I did my ad edits, I had A1 and A2 selected, so it did make cuts on my audio, but all the clips are the exact same name. When I used my M keys, it just did video cuts, okay? So, which is ideal. You don't want, regardless, you don't want your audio to change most likely because you'll have your main final audio. So it'll just be these cuts. And then when you're ready to trim, then I just come in and do whatever trims I need to fix any timing issues. Okay. Now, what if you're in a situation where actually when you make your cuts, you want to have the audio cut too? So you can do your ad edits like I did here with your video and audio selected. Okay, so I have everything selected and then do your ad edits. Or if you're using your M keys or clicking on your monitors, you'll need to do a quick setup in your source monitor. All right, so let me just clean this up a second by overwriting this again. Okay, so totally clean setup. And then I'm gonna hit Shift F8 to go into my multicam. And then if I'm just gonna make a couple cuts here, and you'll see I'm clicking so you can actually see it happen. So there's those cuts just on video, okay? To make it on audio as well, you need to click the multicam button, and in the source side, and choose audio follow video. And then when you do that, when you make your cuts, your audio will follow your video. So you can see I have my cuts in both video and audio. Okay, so if you need that, which isn't that common, but it's available. Now, one gotcha on that, and I'm just gonna hit Shift F8 a second to get out of this. Notice I'm in regular source record mode, and notice in my upper left of my source monitor, I have two boxes. So two box icons with the quad display. This is for making a subclip, dragging and dropping to a bin. This is the multicam one. So if you click this and you're not seeing anything happen, it's because of a composer setting. So I'm going to command equals with my composer window active, control equals on Windows. And I have always displayed 2 rows of buttons. If I have the default set, notice that green went away. All I have is this. So if you're looking for that menu, you can't find it, this is why. And I always have 2 rows of information all the time. This isn't a big deal for me, but if you've been wondering, well, why don't I have that? There you go. So that's what you need to have called up to have access to this menu, if you've been wondering where it is. Green means this is on. Gray means it's off. Okay, so we've got that. So that's the workflow. I create my group clip based on my text view structure, cut it into my timeline, Shift F8 or whatever your key is to go into 9 split or quad split. I like to do the add edit method where I have these deselected, play, and then in my case F4 is doing a snapshot because I didn't pick very well today. So I would do my add edits, and then I switch my shots by either Shift up and down arrow key or Option Alt on Windows, clicking the screen. And there's your rough cut, all set to go. One last thing with this, when you're done, depending on what resolution you're working on, this is low band resolution. It's the classic DNX 36. So everything's playing back great. But if you're working in pretty high resolution, this may not play back well and you may have other issues. When you're all set with your rough edit, you can right click on your sequence in the bin and then choose commit multicam edits. So commit multicam edits, and it'll say, hey, it's going to basically take out all the takes and just make this a standard sequence, like as if you just loaded every angle and started cutting them manually with Splice It Overwrite. And then it also will tell you that it made a copy. So now I have one without groups. Okay, so notice that it looks funny when I'm in multicam mode. It's all the same shots because these are all just individual shots now, as opposed to my group clip, which still has all the angles. So you can do that, and that's done at the bin level. And of course, that is all the time we have for power tips on this one. So I definitely want to make sure I get some questions from you guys. And if there's no questions, I'll show one more thing. But let's take some questions.
Yes, Marianne, we have a couple that come in. Are you able to do a shortcut for a split for 3 or 5 cameras?
You would, for 3, you would use quad split, and for 5, you'd use the 9 split, or I'd probably use quad split and then maybe switch banks depending on how many times you're going to be going to all the different angles. But yeah, it's just quad and 9.
All right, perfect. The next question, when you group the clips with waveform analysis, do you still need, would that still work for the cameras when they stopped in creating 2 different clips for the camera angle, or would you need to create 2 different groups?
Right. Well, it depends on your setup. So ideally, you don't stop the record, but it will be it just lines it up once because it's one clip. What you can do is you can make sub clips. So if you need to, where they stopped and started, but then you'll have separate times, which is a multi-group, which actually is the one thing I didn't get to show. So let me just go ahead and do this a second. So I have all these angles here and they're at different times, and I want to make a multi-group clip. Now, if they share time codes and they're not overlapping time codes, you would actually just select all your shots and right click and do multi-group, or go to your clip menu and do multi-group, and you'll get the same syncing options. But they do need to share unique, you know, they all have to share the same time code, but unique time code. Otherwise, what you need to do is build what's called a sync map. So what I have here is a timeline. It's a little hard to see because of my monitor resolution, where I have lots of these stacked up. So this is basically scene 1, scene 2-ish, and then here's my scene 3 I was just playing with. You can make a sequence map this way. It's more manual, of course, and then you would make your group clip, your multi-group clip. So let me just show you what this looks like. If you have to make a sync map where you have to edit, and this is just loading all the shots into tracks and cutting splice overwrite like you normally do, stacking them up. Then when I right click on my record monitor, basically my composer window, I can create group. And then this time I have, and it's probably really hard to see, but there's a little tiny dot to the left of my 4 square, and that indicates a multi group. So if you were to do the subclip method and you've got the time codes, unique time codes that overlap, what you'll end up with is a multi-group clip. Otherwise, if there's gap, stop, start, it'll do the waveform analysis and it just stacks them up once as a continuous clip. All right, hopefully that makes sense. And I just want to show one thing with this group clip. Regardless of how you had to make it, if I right click this and choose edit group, it's when there's multiple side by side, you can see that they're in stacks as individual groups. Okay. It's just the only tediousness with this is the time codes have got to be good, or your even waveform analysis, if there's any overlap, it can all end up on the first stack, which isn't what you want. So hopefully that answers that.
I think so. We'll see. Give her a minute to answer here. Right now, that is all the questions I had. Was there something else you wanted to share, or was that part of it?
This was actually just showing this multi-group, and I can show you kind of the difference. So I made this based on the sync map, and it groups everything all nicely, because this doesn't have nice, neat time codes. And what I mean by that is these are all subclips various times in this video. And if I were to just go right click and multi-group with this, actually I'm gonna have to pick time codes. It's gonna try to do it. But what you're gonna end up seeing is instead of each individual stack, it's gonna be probably all stacked up together. And of course now I have more elements, so it is taking a little bit longer to do the analysis. See if it'll go, otherwise I'll pick a different option real fast here. Okay, I'm gonna cancel out of that. Let me just go by time code. Yeah, it's just because of the clips I have. It's gonna take a minute, but usually what will happen if I just do, I'll do endpoints here, is if it's not great, if it's not perfect, everything ends up stacked together. So if you have overlapping waveforms at all with the same waveform data and that kind of thing, which is what leads to that sync map. So you really want unique time codes or very unique audio.
Awesome. Yeah, I see the issue with the stacking there.
Yeah.
Yes, and you did answer the question from previously, so thank you so much. So
Good.
it looks like that's about wrapping up our session. We don't have any other questions at this time. Let me go ahead and share my screen so we can show you what is coming up. We're so happy to have Marianne with us as usual for all of our sessions. And I believe we're going to share this. There we go. So hopefully everyone can see that. We do have Marianne the next couple weeks. We're going to be doing 3D warp beyond transformation parameters. That should be interesting. I can't wait to see that one. And then color management. So again, if you do like the sessions, please drop us a note, or if there's content you would also like to see, that would be at liveonlinelearning@avid.com, and we will post the videos back to avid.com. So we're so happy you could join us today. A little shout out to those that woke up in New Zealand. It was 3 a.m. there, but they wanted to see your session. So thanks for attending. We really appreciate it. And Marianne, as usual, thank you so much. And we'll let you get on with your day. Have a good one.
Thanks, guys. Take care.